Wonderful. Dear colleagues, it is with great pleasure that I was listening to the keynotes, and today I just want to dilute it a little bit, the high theories with empirics. But this empirics theory is based on theories and on the theory, and I wanted to talk about a reform of Russian innovativism from the position of narrative economy. And as it says in narrative economy, it says I start with aphorism and start with sayings and aphorisms, and one of them is Einstein's and the other one is attributed to him. Why they're interesting to me? Well, first of all, of course, the first one, Einstein says that serious tasks that we encounter could not be resolved at the same level of thinking that was used when we were creating the tasks. So for old but serious tasks, you need new thinking. And the second aphorism, that is just madness to do the same thing and expect different results. And both these aphorisms, they can be applied to Russian innovation system. What can we talk about Russian innovation system? The narrative economy of this approach, for example, there were two Nobel, Kirillov and Schiller. It was started, the term, Robert Schiller came up with the actual term, and the basis of narrative economy is that what instance we're talking about, that you have to study what people are talking about, discourses of the authors. And Kirillov and Schiller, they went a little bit further because they are mainstream, and they paid attention to two factors here. Factor number one, that narratives can be viewed as simplified proto-models, as well as narratives can be viewed as some of the data on the social context, where various economics interactions happen. So this approach, although it is not super new, but it made it possible to delineate to certain points here, and it helped the development of institutionalism, and through narratives we get very important data on the rules and institutes. And the analysis of narratives, the narrative economy, that is into two directions here. So this is the virus being viral, being impactful, the impact of a narrative. Certain stories which have important ideas, rules, and here it could be case that ideas rule the world, but not always they related to the scientists that actually came up with it. And Schiller showed it microeconomic various examples and microeconomical examples that some of the virality of a certain narrative can be explained by certain economic events. And then again, this Kirillov here gives us important information that gives us rules and institutions and in certain interaction between the authors. And Kirillov shows how through anecdotal stories you can explain the plan economy where Sovietologists, they couldn't understand, as it could be understood through jokes. Joke stories. And in order to analyze the Russian innovation system, we used this approach. First, we selected 43 sources, rated the best rated sources, that is media, digital media and internet, and these 43 sources were 30 words, content analysis. We were looking at it and we were looking for 30 words, and then 30 words were selected, and there were 30 keywords. In Telegram, we just got the full text, which had these keywords to do with innovation system. And then we had the master of 33,000 of these articles, and this is just totally mad number. And we were nine of us, we went through, and then 1149 narratives we've selected, and these stories on Russian innovation system we tried analyzing qualitatively and quantitatively, and both. So we use this Robert Schiller program and partially Akerlov's program. So the classification is like this. And the reading the narratives made it possible to see 5 central problems here, around which there are stories about Russian innovative system. These 6 problems: the state management of innovation activities, that is probably that, and the subjects of the demand for innovation, institutional structure and competition, human resources, and intellectual property. And then these central issues, they became the kind of direction of study, direction of our analysis, a more detailed fashion, better quality analysis about what and which rules and what institutions and what authors are talking about when they talk about the Russian innovative system. And now I'm talking about Schiller, about virality. And virality cannot be demonstrated, but with interfacts we can actually see how the spread of certain concepts would correlate with certain laws being passed, different companies who were the campaigns carried out in the Russian society. And if we look at the narratives, like innovation cluster, for instance, if we look at that, then we can see the graph of impactfulness of so like the interfax scan. This is the dynamic of frequency, and this frequency, this it can also be it also correlates very well with various laws being passed, various and bylaws, and then people talk about it, then the law is passed, and people talk more about it, then the bylaw is passed again, etc. So this is kind of seesaw, these teeth, and it goes up gradually. So this is the dynamic happening in Russia, and this is all the entire set of Russian media, which is in scan interfax. This is the absolute majority of media there, using innovation policies, applying innovation policies. So talking about innovation policies, they start, there is this going up, and this is the index of notability, and that starts from 2001. And then it goes a little bit quieter, and then afterwards, from 2007, 9, 10, there is growth, and there is a peak here, and a peak in 2014, 2015, and beyond any doubt, the problem of modernization that was declared, and they were talking about innovation policies. So this is this virality. It is correlated, but without these things, you can't really explain anything there with them. And then I'm going to show you how qualitatively we analyzed the patent issue, for example. We also can see with the Google Ingram service, with its help, we can have a look how in Russian, all the Russian books published in Russian, two interesting concepts: this implementation of innovation and a demand for innovation in Soviet times and in Russian time, and even more. So people talk about implementation of innovation, and nobody talks about the actual demand for innovation. So that is that correlates with the global problem with low lack of demand for innovation in a Russian innovation system. When we were analyzing narratives from the media, we saw that this is one of the most important central problems and one of the most important problems. And in the end, I'm going to tell you about it a little bit. And we see that, for example, the phraseology to implement innovation, this is the Soviet phraseology, and it actually does exist. It does. Continues the inertia. It pushes away this demand for innovation. So quality and quantity, what is happening with intellectual property and patents, and beyond any doubt, for innovation system is very important. But in Russian innovation system, patents are this very interesting relationship with that, and we tried quantitatively to evaluate that, how relate the real statistical indicator with talking about patents, and we build co-integration, and there is a link between these. How many patents were filed and how many were issued, and there's a concept when patents used. And here we got to a very important point, that they talked about them all the time, but in what context? And this context didn't surprise us. It didn't surprise me. It's very important that they talk negatively. So the tone of narratives on intellectual property is only 22% positive, and 43% it is neutral, and 35% the tone is negative. Talking about patents, it is negative. And what is very interesting here, how you can split here into, it depends on what author talks about. And what is totally amazing here, that the most negative, it is business and the representative of the state, the regulating authorities, and the academy. It is very low also, the liking of the page, but it is even worse than that. And it shows very well that in Russian system, patent is not connected to the real innovation. Patent is something, it's just, oh, we have the state order, and there's so many patents, so you need, so yeah, you'll have the patents, what the use of the patents then doesn't have anything to do with that. And we go into a deep interview, we talk a lot about people from the academy. You are dealing, in natural sciences and technical sciences and real production, for example, experimental production. They talk about patents, and what they say normally is that the narrative is present that in modern contemporary, what's important is not patented. This is being secreted. You just make secret out of it. And another narrative is making people innovate. So wonderful, yeah. People start talking about it in the middle of the 2000s, and then this forcible innovation. So when people are forced to innovate, it's in the sphere of state purchase, governmental procurement. So there is a federal law where there is a point where the articles only say innovation. We buy innovation, right? So this is indicated here in the 222 federal law. So for the corporation, Roscosmos, Rosatom, and all the rest of them. Corporation, state-run, state-owned corporation. We had a look in the Unified Information System. So what is this? What kind of innovation purchasing then? So if they are forced to do innovations, well, this is what we saw, the innovation purchase, consultant plus filling up printer cartridges and fixing vehicles. This is all innovation purchases. Can you believe it? And that shows us once again that forcing people to innovate, the same as patented. Yeah, the indicator is there, but there are no innovations. And to summarize, I just want to say, very important generalization. When we analyzed the large masses of stories that authors says, and the authors would split authors into this academia, state, and business, and on what they had to say on Russian innovative sentiment. There were three conditions, and the two preconditions that without which that the authors think and we think that innovation system will just not start up. It will not get moving. If one of these conditions is lacking, then it doesn't happen. And it is functioning, it will function extremely non-efficiently. These three conditions are very simple. And to get them together, it is very something interesting, and this political and economical stability. It doesn't matter what, how political economic stability and sustainability, how you get there. Is it liberal democracy? Is it democratic centralism like in China? So it has to be stable. It has to be sustainable. The regime has to be sustainable. That's it. Next condition: there's got to be initiative. There's got to be entrepreneurial activity, so that the resources follow in entrepreneurial activities. And the third factor, and absolutely necessary for the institution, these are mechanisms of increasing feedback, increased payback. So there is these two transitional conditions. This is establishment of market infrastructures and development of education and academia. Here, academia, research and education are very important to increase the increasing returns mechanism. To go back to the aphorisms that I announced in the beginning, I want to give you the example. When we studied these experiences, and we saw that these three conditions, they in various systems they implemented differently. How they were successfully implemented in China. And here we were totally astounded how in social market economy in China, which officially this is what it's called, they approach on the one hand to the establishment of market infrastructure and stimulating entrepreneurial activities. On the other, they how the mechanisms start of the increased payback mechanism. And to me, it was totally in Global Times on 10th of April. There was an article published where they say that the Central Committee has published the decree that on the speeding up of unified national market, we have to establish it. And when I read the article, that these decisions, this is the textbook on market economy, the reduction of barriers in transaction spending, and they talked about the development of technologies, the protection of copyright property, and Reformation movements shift of the country to more market-like economy. And the other thing that was totally astounding is that the market from stops being large but becomes powerful market, and with all these conditions that I was talking about, and so as not to talk too much, just quoting others, but politologists advised me to look at the speech on the 19th Congress of the Chinese Communist Party, and some points that he made, how this establishment of the market infrastructure and entrepreneurial activities, and the three phrases to do with the establishment of the system, to do with innovation, then I was astounded totally. And it says there that we have to establish an economic system which would differ and would have effectiveness. Market economies would be viable of micro subjects, and macro regulation will be moderate. So what could be more market-like? I don't know. I have no idea. But in summary, I'm going to give you three aphorisms, three sayings. Reading many books, Chinese authors on economics, they mention this aphorisms, and three aphorisms are the best ones that I want to finish. Not indirectly, they touch on effective innovations. The first one: it doesn't matter what color the cat is, as long as it catches mice. It's Deng Xiaoping said that. They say. So it doesn't matter what it's called, as long as it works. Be it capitalism, market economy, or socialist market economy, it doesn't matter if it works. How it is formed, and when they describe Chinese reforms, that's about them. First, take a seat on the bus. Afterwards, buy the ticket. So, reforms, they are adaptive. Reforms, they are adapt to the reality. So, in order to get onto the bus, we could, if you want to start regulate something, that's something, we have to start something to do. So then you buy a ticket. And then first you take a seat on the bus, and then you buy a ticket. And then the second one, I love more than others. The long thread will go forever, and the short one is always too short. And this is on system reforms. So it's got to be systematic. So if the reforms are systematic, if we patch up the holes, and if we don't have the system vision of building the long thread of these repeating events which we see and plan and strategically build, then when we get into the situation where our thread is running out all the time and the long one never starts. Thank you very much, colleagues.